things are smelling pretty good in Kansas City this morning after smelling not so good. It was just one of those games where it just felt like the Chiefs couldn't get going. The Chiefs, even with the extra time to get ready, Andy Reid 20-3 for his career when he has a bye, yada, yada. And I didn't understand. And this is one that restores my faith in my own gut feeling, because the spread was 12.5 points. And Sims and I talked about this last week. Peter King and I talked about this last week. Why in the hell were the Chiefs 12.5-point favorites over the Tennessee Titans, even if Vegas knew that Ryan Tannehill wasn't going to play? How was the betting so lopsided on the Chiefs that it drove it up 12.5 points, if that's what did it? It didn't make any sense to me. Now, I still thought the Chiefs were going to win, and somehow they did. But, you know, the Titans, when you can run the ball effectively and when you can keep the Chiefs' offense off the field, and when they're on the field, they're not clicking because your defense is getting it done, you have a chance to beat them. That's your only chance to beat them, really, unless you get into a shootout and match them drive for drive and do just enough on defense, like a tennis match, and break serve a couple of times or once, as the case may be. That's the only way you're going to beat these Chiefs.
Yes, it is. But, you know, it's funny because we were talking about this on the PFT text chain last night, and it's like you see what the Titans can do with Malik Willis, who is a quarterback who's ostensibly not really ready to play, right? And yet they're still in it because Mike Vrabel coaches his ass off. And so, like, that's really the reason why, if you're looking at the spread and you're like, well, why the hell are the Chiefs favored by so much? It's like it's not taking into account how good of a football coach Mike Vrabel is, right? I mean, last week, I know it was the Houston Texans, but when you have a quarterback who's making his first career start for an injured starter and he only throws the ball 10 times and you still win and you're controlling the game as they did because they ran it for 314 yards, that's one thing, right? It's hard to do that 2 weeks in a row and still beat an opponent that is of an entirely different caliber than the one you were playing the week before, right? But they were in position to win. It's just that at the end of the game, when the quarterback had to be a part of it, he couldn't do anything that was actually going to help them win. Malik Willis is not at the point right now where he can elevate a team into winning. And that's not to mention the fact that they don't have wide receivers right now that can really get open. And oh, by the way, the receiver that they used to have that could get open and that's getting open a lot in Philadelphia was making fun of them on Twitter last night a lot.
And
there it is.
A.J. Brown spent a lot of time after he was traded to the Eagles saying, this wasn't me, I wanted to stay, don't blame me. And the tweets from last night would suggest that he did want out, and he's glad he got out. Regardless of what the thinking was in April, he's glad he got out. And look, this goes back to, and for everything the Titans do well, the question of, you draft a guy, you develop a guy, it's time to pay him. The lottery ticket you scratched off has won. You pay him and keep him. You don't trade him in for another lottery ticket and then draft a receiver and put even more pressure on that guy to replace the guy you traded. That's the Troy Williamson dynamic. Do you remember who Troy Williamson was?
No, sorry.
You probably don't. You shouldn't. He's the guy the Vikings took with the top 10 draft pick the year they traded Randy Moss, and he was a disaster. A disaster. Yeah, and look, hey, in the right system, at the right team, at the right time, he had the talent to be good, but you put extra pressure on the guy. Treylon Burks, I feel bad for him, and it gets even worse now. And I'm looking at these stats, Miles, last night for the Titans receivers. Holy crap. I mean, not a single one. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
They didn't even catch a pass. Yeah.
Robert Woods got targeted twice, no catches. Chris Conley targeted once, no catches.
Well, he should have caught that.
And remember, Robert Woods is the one that, hey, he can make a difference. The Rams shouldn't have let him get away. And maybe the Rams could do more with him than the Titans are doing. But again, you throw in the rookie quarterback, the run-centric, run-heavy, run-all-the-time offense. But still, at the end of the day, Derrick Henry only carried the ball 17 times last night, but still he was getting big chunks of yard, 115 total yards on the ground for him. I'm just amazed it was as close as it was, especially when you look at the statistics. Something MDS pointed out today on the website ProFootballTalk.com. The 38 completion gap between the Chiefs and the Titans is the biggest in NFL history. The Chiefs, with Patrick Mahomes, completed 43 of 68 passes. He was just too short of tying Drew Bledsoe for the all-time single-game record from November of 1994 against the Vikings when the Patriots wiped out a 20-3 deficit at halftime and won in overtime. 70 passes for Bledsoe. Malik Willis had 5 completions on 16 attempts. He had almost one-third of the attempts as Patrick Mahomes had completions.
Yeah, well, and that's basically the difference, right? I mean, you have a quarterback that you trust and a quarterback that we know can lead a team down the field, that can lead a team to victory, whether it's by his arm or through his legs, as it happened to be last night, versus a quarterback who's making his second career start, who was a third-round pick, who was the quarterback at Liberty and was not asked to do as much as an NFL quarterback needs to do. So, yeah, that's kind of what happens. And when the Chiefs get down, they have to be able to throw the ball to get themselves back in it. That's exactly what happened last night.
Let's hear from both head coach Andy Reid of the Kansas City Chiefs. Last time we heard from Andy Reid, he was talking about how much he likes Mr. Goodbar. I assume he likes winning.
Mr. Goodbar.
Almost as much. Here's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid talking about the win from last night.
You've got to be able to win a game like that. There's where everything just isn't perfect, and your emotions are up and down, and you got to fight through that, persevere through that, and be able to rally. Somebody's got to step up and rally. We were so close on so many plays, and rather than get frustrated, step up and let's go.
We're going to see this team a lot. I mean, they're well coached. Vrabel's a heck of a coach. They have a lot of great players. And they bring a physicality to the game, and we're not going to back down from anybody. And so I'm glad of the way our guys responded. And we went out there and battled to the very end and got the win.
Patrick Mahomes with his $500 million contract wearing a T-shirt to the press conference. I love that. I love it. Patrick Mahomes can do whatever the hell he wants to do. And Andy Reid hit the nail on the head. How many times, Miles, do we see a team where things aren't going well? It's not their day, and it would be so easy to just accept it, to just settle in, to slip into the hot bathtub of failure. And they kept pushing. They refused to let short-term adversity throw them off, bring them down, end their day, and they just kept going. That is the mark of a championship caliber team, because that is a team that is going to fight through, possibly in a postseason game, one of these days, one of these moments, one of these drives, one of these whatever that could be the thing that gets you to break. They didn't break, and they had every reason where they could have just said, sorry, we'll still be 6-3, we'll still be fine, we'll still have plenty of games left. They didn't accept that, and they kept going until they got the win.
Well, you know, Mike, I mean, this is the MO of the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs. I mean, think about that championship season that they had in 2019. Every time that they could have slipped into the hot bath of failure, which is something that I'm going to use, by the way. I mean, they kept pushing. They kept fighting back. And obviously, you know, when you're down 24-0 in a playoff game, that's different than being down, you know, by a few points in a regular season game, as they were last night, down by 8 for a lot of that game. But it's the same sort of attitude, the same sort of mentality, right, that you have to be able to have to say, no, every time that the defense gets a stop, it's going to be an opportunity for us. And yeah, we're not doing it yet, but we know that at some point we can break through as long as we persevere and we keep pushing, because we've done it before. It might not have been exactly with this group, but our core guys that have been with us for a long time, we've done it. You know, Patrick Mahomes has done it. Travis Kelce's done it. So it's not like it's totally unfamiliar territory for them. And I think once they get on a roll like that, that's how they can continue to win. It makes sense when you're talking about the Chiefs led by Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
When I think of Patrick Mahomes as a runner, the first thought that comes to mind is the 2019 AFC Championship game.
Me too.
When he worked his way down the left sideline against the Tennessee Titans. And I'm thinking, will no one actually try to tackle Patrick Mahomes? It's the old Vince Lombardi grab, grab, grab. You had a guy try to pull the ball out right before the goal line. It was just a debacle. It was a disaster. It was an embarrassment. So I thought the last team to ever find itself right. But from a defensive standpoint, and part of the mindset is the defensive players are so conditioned to think there's a force field around the quarterbacks and you can't hit them, you can't touch them, you can't do anything. You're going to get a penalty when they take off as runners, and that's one of the tension points this year. The NFL's position is, hey, we've told the officials, once the guy becomes a runner, he becomes a runner and he can be hit. Yeah, then Mac Jones draws a 15-yard foul last week for taking a hit that if a running back had taken it, there wouldn't have been a flag. Right. But of all the teams to not succumb to that same trap, you would think the Titans would be the last ones to do it because they were the ones that were burned by it. But once he starts going, and it finally flickered for me last night, he's not fast, but he makes everybody else look slow. And I don't know what that is. I don't know where that quality comes from. But he's really not moving like Kyler Murray, but no one can catch him. I don't get it. And watch the tail end of this one. I hope the tape goes long enough because he pulls the Gus Frerotte and slams it. He hits his head into the wall like Gus Frerotte did, and Gus Frerotte injured his neck when he did it. That was back in the 90s, Miles. I don't know if you remember that, but I saw him dip his head, and I said, oh, please, Patrick, don't injure yourself like Gus Frerotte once did.
Well, you know what's funny about that run that he had to go in there for a touchdown? I mean, the only thing that basically to me that's different than that in the 2019 AFC Championship game is they're going into the opposite end zone. I mean, it's just so reminiscent of what that play was. And when Patrick Mahomes takes off and he starts running, it's like he's elusive because he understands how to contort his body in such a way that it makes defenders not know exactly which way he's going to go. So it's not like he's fast, like you said, but he has the ability to be elusive. You know, when I was playing football, and this is why I was really bad at defense, they always told us that, you know, the shoulders are like your girlfriend. Your girlfriend's going to lie to you. But if you look at the numbers, then the numbers are like your mother, and your mother's never going to lie. But it's like he makes defenders look at his shoulders the entire time. And for whatever reason, that elusiveness that he has, it just works out, and he's able to get past dudes and get into the end zone. And you don't want him taking hits, but when you need those plays like that, he's able to get it done.
It's the combination of book smarts and street smarts all in one. He's smart, because he knows exactly where he can go. Once he's thrust into it, right? He'd fail the speed test if you put him on the line and said, run 40 yards, go. And it just shows you how meaningless the 40-yard dash is. What matters is once you're out there and all of the other bodies are out there in space with you, how do you navigate through them? Do you know or do you not know which way to go and how to make them? He just has that little shimmy that makes them freeze a little bit. It's the combination. It's beautiful to see. I can't think of another quarterback that's had that power where he looks slow but he moves fast because he makes everybody else slow down to try to get him. It's a thing of beauty for a guy who's one of the best passers and one of the most exciting and dynamic quarterbacks behind the line of scrimmage. What he can do when he decides to run, it just makes him. I don't want to gush about Patrick Mahomes, but how can you not? How can you not? Last night is a prime example.
Yeah, why should we not gush about Patrick Mahomes?
No, because I've been doing it for 5 freaking years. There's a point.
So
I mean,
what?
It becomes cliche, but last night proves why it is cliche.
Let's gush about Patrick Mahomes. We don't gush enough about Patrick Mahomes. Everybody's talking about Josh Allen this, Josh Allen that, Josh Allen this, Josh Allen that. Now we see Patrick Mahomes is going to get it done in primetime. If Patrick Mahomes can't be a part of the MVP conversation just because we gush too much over Patrick Mahomes, I think that's ridiculous. We saw him get it done last night.
I'm not saying that.
We can gush over him a little bit.
No. If the Chiefs are the number 1 seed in the AFC, he's the MVP. The key to the MVP is which teams are the number 1 seeds, and it's one of the quarterbacks from one of the number 1 seeds. Unless Tyreek Hill has 2,100 receiving yards, then he may get a few votes. But he's on track for 2085 so quietly on track for 2,085 receiving yards. Everybody's just kind of like, no big deal. But no, Mahomes. I've been doing We're Not Worthy with Patrick Mahomes for 5 years, and we are not worthy. And this is historic. And between him and Josh Allen, to have them both in the NFL rising into their prime at the same time is a special thing. I will say this, though. If Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen made the throw that P.J. Walker made last Sunday against the Falcons, we'd still be gushing about it. It is amazing when guys who aren't Allen and Mahomes do something that's as impressive or more impressive than what they do. It's quickly forgotten, but if they do it, it becomes part of the legend of Allen and or Mahomes. All right, let's flip it around.
P.J. Walker got benched yesterday, so, I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
For Baker Mayfield.
Well,
so that's also why we don't talk about that.
Wow. It's very different when you start playing teams out of your division, as Steve Wilkes learned the hard way yesterday going to Cincinnati. The Tennessee Titans, they fall to 5-3. They had quietly amassed that 5-2 record. Let's hear from Mike Vrabel, who, as you said, coached his ass off in an effort to beat the Chiefs on Sunday night.
Very disappointing. I feel terrible for the players that compete, put so much into this and play through pain, through discomfort, through any situation. I'm lucky that I get to coach them. They fight, and we got to get back to work. We got to get healthy, and we got to get some rest, and figure out a way to beat Denver coming off another bye.
Defensively, was there much more that they could have done?
I think we could have probably done a little bit more. Obviously, everybody could, but there's no moral victories. We come on the road. That's the thing I want to make sure. Like we've came over here to win. That's all we were thinking about doing. So, I don't want to go down this road of is there more we could done? Yeah, there's more that I could do. There's more that the coaches could do, and the players.
It's a good point when he says there are no moral victories, because I made the argument last week that the Packers avoided being demoralized by the Buffalo Bills, so it counted as a sort of a moral victory. But what happened to them yesterday? They got beat by the Lions in Detroit. So maybe sometimes you need to be demoralized to truly wake you up. Maybe a moral victory makes you complacent, right? Because you still lost. Oh, hey, we won. No, you still lost. Well, we feel good about ourselves. No, you still lost. And Mike Vrabel gets it. You still lost. And he look, there's a fine line between making excuses and pointing out facts. He's just on the right side of pointing out facts. You get yourself into a rhythm of facing teams coming off of a bye, and that's one of the dynamics that teams look at when the schedule comes out. How many times this year are we facing a team where we have a week to get ready and they have 2 weeks to get ready? Mm-hmm. So they get the Broncos. The good news is the Broncos are not the Chiefs, but the bad news is for the second straight game, Mike Vrabel has to get his team ready when he knows the opponents had 2 weeks to prepare to face the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, that's true, and that is one of those unfortunate dynamics. But I think, like you said, the Broncos are not the Chiefs by any respect. Although, I guess the Broncos did kind of figure something out in London against the Jacksonville Jaguars the last time we saw them. But look, here's the thing that I just think about Mike Vrabel and that team in the Titans. They got a bunch of butt kickers. And, the beautiful thing about what they were doing last night was they were rushing with 4 and they were just kicking the mess out of the Chiefs offensive line for so much of that game. You had Orlando Brown, just flailing backwards a couple of times, and they were covering extremely well. So when you have that kind of combination, that's why you see the Chiefs offense struggle as much as it did for as much of that game as that proceeded. But the other part of it, though, is when you have an offense that really can't get anything going in the passing game and it's so extremely one-dimensional, it just means that you're not going to be able to take advantage of all the opportunities you get from the defense, right? They needed an otherworldly performance, basically, from Derrick Henry in order to beat the Chiefs last night. Because, look at this. All of these things that got missed from Patrick Mahomes. That one to Mecole Hardman was just unbelievable that he missed that. I don't know why he wasn't looking for that. But I think what happened was the clock in his head got sped up a little too much because he was being harassed by that front four all night long. So when you're not looking as you would, when you think that you don't have the protection, that's when you start looking for that check down and that outlet there. So, yeah, I mean, it was a really, really, really strong defensive performance by the Tennessee Titans, but eventually you just waste it because you can't get enough going offensively.
0 net yards on their last 7 drives for the Tennessee Titans. That goes a long way toward making it harder to win a game. And they still forced overtime, and they still had a drive where if they had gone down, a field goal would have forced a tie, or they could have won the game with a touchdown, but they just couldn't do anything on that final drive. Derrick Henry tied a career high with his 5th straight game of 100 or more rushing yards, and you talked about the dominance of the defensive line. Jeffrey Simmons was on SiriusXM NFL radio late last week, Thursday night, I think, up against the football and the baseball and everything else, and it really didn't get noticed the way that I thought it would, but he was brash in his remarks that they believe they can dominate the Chiefs' offensive line. I mean, the kind of bulletin board material that gets pumped up on all the talk shows, it never really made it anywhere. It never really took root. It could have, and maybe it should have, and maybe it would have helped the Chiefs light a little fire and play better against that Titans defense. But that's the key to slowing down any high-powered offense. If you can rush with 4 and put pressure on the quarterback, accelerate the clock in his head, as you said, Myles, that's how you can potentially beat a team, because then you've got 7 guys who are flooding the zones or covering the players man-to-man and or doubling them, and when you don't have to devote extra help to getting through to the quarterback. Not that it matters, and we've seen teams constantly decide with Patrick Mahomes, don't waste your time trying to blitz him. You're still not going to get him, and he's going to get his hot read before you're going to get to him.
Right, exactly. And, I mean, Mahomes has been good against the blitz for pretty much his entire career. So that's why you have to be able to rush with 4 as they did last night. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where Mahomes is that good that sometimes the best players, the best quarterbacks, they separate themselves when they have the opportunity to do so. And that's why the Chiefs won that game.
Well, the Chiefs won that game because Tony Dungy at the end of Football Night in America picked the Titans to help us avoid the clean sweep meme, and we would have been hearing about it all day long from the Titans Twitter account and Titans fans that everybody on the show picked the Kansas City Chiefs. So thank you, Coach Dungy. That's ultimately what cosmically delivered the win. Well,
his point was right.
Yeah.
Watch the line of scrimmage.
I made the same
That's
point.
exactly what he said.
I mean, my point wasn't the same as watch the line of scrimmage. I was just saying, can the Titans cook up a formula, slow the game down, run the ball, keep the Chiefs on the sideline? That's one of the ways to beat the Chiefs, but it almost worked, but it didn't. And Coach was right, as he always is. Watch the line of scrimmage, and the line of scrimmage almost delivered the victory for the Titans. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.